All right, so here we are with the initial setup. We're printing a benchy because number one, it's the first time using this filament. It actually is printing pretty good. I have bought these $3 furniture or kitchen appliance things where you put them upside down and you put whatever on top of it, and it helps you move it around on the like linoleum and stuff. And I just kind of took the wing nuts that were holding it together, stacked them tightly, and it's just perfect. Like with a little bit of spacing, it doesn't seem to rub too much on the spool. I can always bend it if it does, but it's actually moving the wheel. So if we get some glistening, so we're watching for that wheel. You can just see it slowly turn. So I wasn't sure if the feeder would be strong enough to move it. I know that it would not, if it was hanging up on the spool holder, it would not be able to turn it without a bearing. So this is just enough that it can roll, and as this kneads it and it pulls it, it will actually roll the spool. And so I'm just watching to make sure that there's enough tension on it, that it's not stretching the filament too much. So if it is, I might have to get some actual bearings and redo this. But so far, it seems to be working pretty good. All right, so in preparation for the actual print, I wanted to see how this was going to print part of it. So I sliced off all but like 5 millimeters of the model, and I figure if it was going to run for an hour or so, that would give me enough revolutions to see if it's going to actually be able to print properly, and I could leave it unattended overnight because this piece is going to take 19 hours to print with the settings that I have right now. I'm not going to print this the way that they say to print because I don't feel like waiting for 2 days for one piece to print. So I'm going to lower the quality. Since I'm going to sand it, I'm going to see if a 19-hour print can be cleaned up while I'm printing the other one. And so we could do like one piece a day for the next 3 or 4 days, however long it's going to take. And then we'll work on the sanding of the model assembly and all that stuff while the next one's going. Once we get past the body, the rest of them is going to have a whole bunch of little pieces. It's still going to take like 12 hours or so, but it's a bunch of little pieces instead of one solid piece. So I would be able to separate it into less components to minimize failures, or more if I know that it can handle it at that point. We will definitely find out how this is going to print once we get this sorted out. So what this is for appliances like your stove, oven, dishwasher, whatever. You would put these go upside down, and this rolls on like your linoleum or tile floor, and then they attach together, and you put them your appliance on top, and it's so you can pull it out and sweep behind it and push it in without having to scrape on the ground and all that kind of stuff, just to help move heavy items. And I got this for $3 at the thrift store, and I thought it was going to work, and it kind of worked. I think with a 2, maybe a 3 kilogram spool, this is perfect. A very, very cheap alternative if you can get one at a thrift store for like a buck or two. I think for smaller spools, this would be perfect. You just bolt it down, screw it down to a piece of MDF that I had kicking around, and just square up the rows so that they're perfectly square with each other with the pairs, so that the front and the rear are going to be as close to square as possible, so you don't get any travel or wobble with the spool as it spins. So beyond that, this particular spool is so heavy. I think because this is designed to have 10 wheels and spread the load, I think it's too much to ask for one of these to actually be able to rotate. I think this is the one that it rotates on, and I think it's just too much. It's not a bearing; it's just a rod through a plastic wheel. So we're gonna get the bearings, some used inline skates from someone in town that I know. He says he might have some, so we're gonna try and source those out hopefully this week, and then we're going to print the actual bearing version of this. Um, so the wheels is the first thing that is gonna probably make this completely work. Uh, the other thing is kind of two parts. So the feeder has to pull, right? So it's got the friction of the wheel, which will be improved. The other thing is these side pieces here. They are touching. I know they're touching the actual spool. I can see marks of the spool where it scraped it. So this is definitely adding friction, and it's just not able to pull with the feeder with the wheels on top of the friction of hit rubbing against the side. Now I could probably just hammer these out, but then it's not gonna. It was kind of holding it in place, and I was hoping it wasn't gonna, cause too much of a hassle. Apparently, it did. So that is not gonna work. And the other part is the spool itself. So we get it out here, and you can see that there's crossovers all over the place. So this is not a very neatly wound spool, and it probably just happened during shipping while it's been printing and there's been slack. It's just been loosening off ever so slightly. But I think it's just like it lots of crossovers, and then what happens is every time that one underneath has to go out, it has to friction pull that whole row over, right? And I think that additional strain while trying to pull it against all of the friction of the base is what made this happen. I'm pretty sure that it was just a combination of all three factors, and there's nothing I can do about it other than just rebuild this thing. So you can see where it was printing fine on this row, and then it started having problems. So it would be fine, fine, fine. Then it caught a snag, and then it would start working again, and then it would fail again, and then at this point it was just like a never-ending struggle for it. It just could not feed it at all, and it was like down here printing dry by the time I caught this. So I stopped it. I'm glad that I did this because I would not want to go to sleep and let this run like dry all night. That would just be horrible. So I'm very, very glad that I did this test. I do not feel it is a waste at all. It is good to test your things, especially if you've never done it before. So that is the first step done. Second step is rebuilding the spool holder. I know the printing is going to be fine. It's the delivery of the filament is going to be the issue. And once we get the bearings and the housings printed in the blue filament, we're going to grab our PLA or blue stuff that we have probably half a spool left. We will print the actual roller skatey thing, whatever, for the spool holder, and it's got a guide rail and stuff to keep it square. We will print that, install the bearings, reload the filament into the machine, and we will print this again. So, what are we going to do over the next few days? Barring this, when we start printing, these sections are the main body of this model, and it's going to take a long time to print this. When I load this in, if I load this in with the settings they recommend for a smooth print, um, it would take like 2 days, and I think it was 2 days and 5 hours or something to print on my machine. I don't want to do that. I have better things to do with my life than wait for something to print that takes 2 days that I probably don't need to. So this slice, when I did not before I sliced it down and I have the settings in here, I got it down to 19 hours at a 0.3 layer height. I figure if I'm going to be sanding anyways, I might as well just save time and sand and fill later because why not? It's not like I'm in a massive rush to get this thing on the shelf. But yeah, I think what we'll do is we will print one, and then we will work on the sanding filling and get it smooth. And it'll just be a rough sanding, right? I don't want to do a full sanding and get it perfectly smooth in a piece because I want to make sure that the transition between these two pieces are going to be close enough that I can fill the gaps and then not have to worry about it uh, having different heights on each section and I have a ridge. So I'm going to wait until I have two pieces together and then I'm going to try and fit them, see how much sanding it's going to take, and then we'll decide if we're going to just print all of the main housing pieces and deal with the rest as it goes. Like, there are three big portions that make up the body, and then there's all the housing stuff that goes around that connects to the rear engine, and all the guns and all stuff goes onto it on the side. But the rear engine part is a separate section, and it just glues in. I don't think the engines themselves are actually clipped in and glued together with these little clip holes. I think it's you just flat out glue it. So what we'll do is we will print all of these parts because these all have to have the clip. And I'm going to show you a setting. Oh, that's cool. A setting that I changed and what I am doing for the printing process. And for that, I need to grab the base. All right, so this is the base. And you can see it actually prints in 8 pieces. And I printed this 2 halves. Let's actually take this apart here. And I kind of printed this stuff in 2 settings. All right, so we're gonna leave that. So these were actually the first 2 things I printed. Now I'm gonna try and find some, which should not be too hard. These ones are kind of there. So inside is the plastic, and it's the support material. There's a really good example. This is a pain. I did not like this. So these were printed with Cura, okay, and the Cura settings that they recommended, and it was doing this, and it probably took me like a couple minutes to dig one of these out enough that the clips wouldn't break, which I've broken 2 or 3 now. But they were not going in and snapping in place up to the center line. There's a little 3 dots, and that's where it has to go to, and they were not doing it. So I switched over to the Prusa slicer, and rather than doing the uh, what is it, zigzag supports or whatever, I have printed it with organic supports in Prusa because the trees are okay, but they didn't look very good. The tree supports were perfect. These have no support material inside. The only thing it did was put a little notch, like if it printed this way, the top part of the hole had the tree support go up to it, and then it printed the layer of it, right? And that is the part that was missing on these ones because it was filling it with support material, and it was just filling it up, and it would just bond. If it's because it's not 100% accurate, my printer settings would probably be adjusted, but it was just filling it, and I'd had to dig it out using these and pliers and try to pull it apart. It's just a mess. So I decided, actually there's a piece of the infill of part of it there. But anyways, so I'm going to print the rest of the model with these settings, especially when it comes to this part, because I don't want to have to deal with digging these out. And I noticed that it was only the horizontal ones that did it. So because these pieces printed this way, all of these were full, okay? But the vertical ones weren't. So this one has a horizontal one, so it prints like that. There's one, and these ones are vertical. These work perfect every single time. All the vertical ones are fine, but the horizontal ones got filled. And because of that, yeah, I switched to the different infill. They kind of snap together pretty well when they're clean. It works really good. I'm trying not to reprint these things. I'll just make it work. The only other problem that I have is this part here. This is where the model will sit on it. So like the bottom of it, this isn't the actual part, but the bottom of it will sit on here, and there's a little hole in the bottom of that bottom tail piece that goes in here, but there's a cylinder that they give you as a part, and on the diagram for installation it shows these two pieces go together and the cylinder drops down. However, I looked at the model. This is here, but the cylinder does not have a hole in it. And I have a question sent into them and asked them exactly how that's supposed to work. And I haven't gotten a reply back in a couple days, so we will see what they have to say about that. Um, Maybe there's a setting that I'm not doing, but yeah, that is the current state. We will do the rest of the build process for the spool holder and start printing at least these pieces, and we will go from there. So stay tuned for the rest. And if you have any questions, or you want me to go over anything with the model as we're building this thing, make sure to leave a comment, like and subscribe. If you have tips on anything that you can, like if you build models and stuff and you have any tips for me, please do let me know, because I have never built anything like this before, and it has probably been at least 20 to 30 years since I've actually done any model building. So yeah, let's have some fun here.